The air in the Oasis is tasting like rusted pennies and dead skin. The scrubber's main pulse driver is seizing, coughing up a rhythmic metallic clatter that tells me the end is near. If it stops, the carbon trap saturates, and I don't wake up. My current Transient Vault, a bloated third-generation slab of lithium-ion salvaged from a pre-fall medical array, is sweating. Not water. It's weeping a gray, acidic bile that eats into my workbench. It's reached its final end cycle, and it's letting the whole bunker know with a low-frequency groan that vibrates in my molars. I have maybe 6 hours of breathable atmosphere left before the lungs give out entirely. I had to go out. The wind was a serrated blade today, hauling the fine glass-heavy dust of the old cities across the flats. Visibility was less than 10 meters, just enough to see the hulking shadow of a Goliath drone resting in the ravine like a dead god. They called these things sovereign logistics units back then. To a scavenger on the net, it's just a ribcage of titanium and silicate, waiting for someone with enough desperation to risk the residual radiation and the jagged edges of its pride. I've seen men lose hands to the pressurized hydraulics of a dead drone. Even in death, the old world bites. I found the target buried deep in the drone's secondary power bus, nestled behind a cluster of burst static traps. It's a high-density transient vault, untouched by the scavengers of the red waste. It's a beautiful, terrifying Silic-Fossil. Even through my lead-lined gloves, I could feel the hum emanating from the casing. It's a haunting, high-pitched whine, the sound of a decade's worth of trapped, angry electrons trying to find a way back into the Earth. It's a lethal charge. One wrong touch, one slip of the pry bar against a live terminal, and I become a charred smear on the ravine floor. The potential energy inside this box is enough to level a city block if the containment field fails. I spent 4 hours in the belly of that beast, my breath rattling in my filter mask, slowly disconnecting the vault from the drone's decayed nervous system. The synthetic skin on the internal cabling had fused with the copper veins over years of heat and neglect, forming a blackened, rubbery sludge that smelled of ozone and ancient fire. I had to use the ceramic blade to shave away the corrosion, millimeter by agonizing millimeter. Every movement was a silent negotiation with the machine's spirits that still flicker in the dark of the chassis. "Easy, girl," I muttered to the chassis, my voice a dry rasp against the silence. "I'm not here to break you. I'm here to give you a purpose again. I'm here to make you the heart of something that still breathes." Bringing it back to the Oasis was a slow, punishing crawl. The vault weighs 40 kilos of dead energy and heavy metals. Every step through the shifting silt felt like dragging a coffin through a nightmare. But it's here now. It sits on my workbench, glowing with a faint, sickly ultraviolet light from its primary status indicators. A ghost light from a world that forgot how to turn the power off. The hum has changed since I brought it into the shelter. It's deeper now, more impatient. It wants to bleed. It wants to release that 10-year-old fury into the shelter's grid. If I don't vent it correctly, if I don't perform the graft with the precision of a surgeon, the sheer pressure of the stored voltage will turn this room into a kiln. I can feel the air thinning. My lungs are beginning to ache, a familiar tightness that tells me the oxygen levels are dropping below the safety threshold. But the find is good. This vault hasn't been drained, hasn't been cycled to death by some amateur. It's a pristine piece of the old world's arrogance. The frequency is locked. The Silic-Fossils are laid out on the bench. Let the graft begin. The workbench is a graveyard of things that used to matter. It's a scarred slab of industrial polymer, stained by decades of spilled electrolyte, and the scorched signatures of 1,000 grafts. Under the flickering cyber blue LEDs, The Transient Vault looks less like a battery and more like a dormant lung, heavy and pulsing with a life that isn't mine. The hum, that high, thin scream of trapped electrons, is louder now. It's the sound of a decade of silence finally finding a voice, and it's a voice that wants to burn me alive. To bring this vault into the shelter's nervous system, I have to bleed the high scream. The potential energy inside is sitting at its peak saturation, what the old world called a full charge, but what I call a lethal stasis. If I bridge the positive and negative leads right now, the sheer force of the flow would vaporize my copper leads and likely fuse my retinas. I need to bleed it down to a stable pulse, a voltage that the scrubber's primitive intake valves can swallow without choking. I reach into the bin under the bench, my fingers brushing against the cold, jagged edges of Silic-Fossils, cracked motherboards, snapped daughter cards, and the hollowed-out husks of pre-fall communication arrays. I find what I need, a heavy-duty thermal gate I salvaged from an old industrial kiln. To the uninitiated, it's a high-wattage ceramic resistor, a chunky, sand-colored cylinder designed to turn electrical pressure into raw heat. To me, it's a muzzle for the beast. I begin by stripping the synthetic skin from a length of thick, salvaged copper braid. The insulation is brittle, flaking away in gray scales that look like dead skin, revealing the dull orange glint of the metal beneath. I don't have fresh solder. I have slag paste, a mixture of reclaimed lead tin and pine resin flux I cooked over a methane stove. It's dirty, it's smoky, and it stings the eyes, but it holds. I fire up the stinger, my soldering iron, a crude tool made from a heating element, and a filed-down copper bolt. It groans as it draws from my dying reserve battery, but the tip eventually glows a dull, angry red. The smell hits me first, the sharp, acrid bite of the flux meeting the ancient copper. It's a holy scent. It's the smell of survival. I graft the thermal gate across the vault's terminals using the copper braid, my hand steady despite the tremor in my chest. This is the moment where the ghost in the vault decides if I live. As the last connection makes contact, there's no spark, no flash. Instead, there's a sound, a low, descending moan as the high scream begins to bleed off. The thermal gate begins to shimmer. The air around it ripples with heat haze. I can feel the warmth radiating off the ceramic, a dry, artificial heat that tastes of ozone. This is the energy of the old world, the power of a dead civilization, being bled into the cold air of my bunker. I'm essentially burning the past to keep the present from freezing. I watch the flow meter, a salvaged analog gauge with a cracked glass face. The needle is pinned against the far right, vibrating with the intensity of the static pressure. "Stay with me, girl," I whisper, my thumb tracing the edge of the vault's casing. "Don't let the heat crack the housing. Just give me the flow. Just breathe for me." As the vault bleeds, I turn my attention to the static traps, the capacitors I pulled from the drone's navigational array. They're Silic-Fossils of the highest order, large cylindrical canisters designed to smooth out the pulse noise. One of them is leaking a brownish ichor, a sign of internal rot, but the other three are solid. I have to wire them in a bridge array to ensure that the raw, jagged current from the vault doesn't shred the scrubber's delicate logic gates. It's delicate work, wire wrapping each terminal with scavenged, thin-skin wire, twisting the copper until it bites into the posts. No room for ghost links, loose connections that arc in the dark. The heat in the room is rising. The thermal gate is now glowing a faint cherry red, and the smell of hot ceramic is thick enough to chew. My lungs are burning now. The carbon levels are climbing, making my head feel light, my thoughts drifting toward the long sleep. I can't afford to drift. If I lose focus and a static trap shorts, the Transient Vault will discharge its remaining heart force in a single millisecond. It wouldn't just kill me, it would blow the door off the Oasis, letting the glass storms in to finish the job. I use a pair of rusted grippers to move the glowing thermal gate. It's a dangerous game, playing with the lethal charge, but the needle on the flow meter is finally starting to drift back toward the center. The high scream has subsided into a manageable hum, a rhythmic, hypnotic vibration that matches the thumping of my own heart. The vault is becoming tame. I begin the final Graft, connecting the bridge array of static traps to the vault's primary output. This is the heart valve of the operation. I'm building a buffer, a place for the electricity to rest for a microsecond before it's shoved into the shelter's grid. My movements are slower now, my muscles heavy with the encroaching CO2. Every twist of the wire feels like it takes an hour. Every drop of slag paste that hits the board is a victory. The vault is ready. It's no longer a screaming relic of the drone war. It's a stabilized life well. The lethal charge has been bled, the static traps are primed, and the Graft is holding. I can see the cyber blue LEDs on the bench reflecting in the pools of cooling solder. It looks like a city at night, seen from miles above, before the lights went out for good. The scrubber is silent now. The pulse driver has finally ceased completely. The silence in the Oasis is absolute, and it's the silence of a tomb. I have the new heart ready. Now I just have to make it beat. The silence is a physical weight now, pressing against my eardrums. Without the scrubber's mechanical heartbeat, the Oasis feels like a tomb waiting to be sealed. My vision is blurring at the edges. The CO2 fog is rolling in, thick and heavy. I have the new Transient Vault seated in its cradle, a rusted iron frame I welded from the remains of a pre-fall server rack. The bridge array of static traps is wired in series, their copper terminals gleaming like small sacrificial altars under my lamp. I take the main feed cable, a thick braided umbilical of synthetic skin, and silver-plated wire, and I prepare the final Graft. This is the primary link. If my calculations on the static pressure were wrong, or if the internal rot in those salvaged capacitors is deeper than I saw, the moment I close this circuit will be my last. The vault doesn't forgive. It only flows. My hand is shaking. Just a tremor. The kind you get when the air is thin and the stakes are terminal. I slide the throttler switch into place. It's a heavy industrial breaker I ripped from a subway control panel 3 winters ago. The copper contacts are pitted with old arcs, but they'll bite. Wake up, I murmur to the machine, my voice a dry sandpaper scrape in the hollow room. Don't let the dark win today. I throw the lever. There's a violent, cyber blue spark that leaps across the gap. A miniature lightning strike that illuminates the grime on my fingernails for a fraction of a second. The smell of ozone explodes into the room, sharp and electric. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. Then, the static traps begin to hum. A rising harmonic whistle as they gorge themselves on the vault's stored heart force. The flow meter needle jumps, dancing rhythmically as the stable pulse establishes itself. Then, the lungs kick. A groan of metal as the pulse driver receives its first clean surge in days. Then, a click. Then, a roar. The scrubber's fan blades begin to spin, slowly at first, then faster, slicing through the stagnant, heavy air. I feel the first rush of new wind against my face. Cold, filtered and smelling faintly of the charcoal scrubbers and the ancient dust of the vault. I lean my forehead against the vibrating casing of the machine, closing my eyes. I can breathe. The Transient Vault has settled into a deep, contented thrum. It's no longer the screaming ghost I found in the ravine. It's a stabilized life well. The Graft held. The Silic-Fossil is alive again. But as the lungs clear the fog from my head, a new sound cuts through the mechanical drone. A ping from the perimeter grid. I look over at the ghost monitor, a cracked CRT display linked to the external sensors. A heat signature. Something is moving through the glass storm, something large enough to trigger the proximity alarms. It's not a scavenger. The thermal footprint is too clean, too regular. The Goliath drone I stripped? It wasn't as dead as I thought. Its kin link must have pinged the net when I severed the vault. It's coming to reclaim its heart. It's coming. The storm is screaming outside, but the ghost monitor shows something colder than the wind. The Goliath is knocking. Keep your frequencies secure and your static traps dry, scavengers. The desert never forgets a debt, and the machines never truly die. For deeper lore on drone evasion and the archives of the old world, head to the Black Market Net's hidden nodes. Stay hidden. Stay alive.